The Minecraft community is genuinely a joke, more specifically the Minecraft PvP community. For the past month, Marlow, the #1 Minecraft player, has been involved in a trending controversy. But just recently, Rapture, the #1 mace PvP player, was exposed for even crazier reasons. And I promise the thumbnail is not clickbait. Let me introduce you to the Minecraft PvP community. So if you've been living under a rock, Marlow was just exposed for being Danger Mario, a male player who spent years catfishing the entire community. But now we are learning that Rapture, who is the best mace PvP player in the world, is actually a guy named HideXL, who has a history going back to 2018 of doing the exact same thing. And honestly, when you hear the full story of who this person really is, it's gonna blow your mind. So like the video, subscribe, and let's start from the very beginning, because the story of Rapture doesn't actually begin with Rapture or even HideXL. It begins with an identity from 2018 called Whiteducker007, who is active in the Minecraft Pocket Edition community, specifically on the server 2b2tpe, which is the Pocket Edition version of the infamous Anarchy server 2b2t. And Whiteducker007 is described as one of the most hated players to ever join 2b2tpe, and his behavior on the server established several patterns that would repeat throughout his entire online history. First, there were base betrayals, like he would repeatedly sell out bases he had been involved in building and the clans he was part of, deliberately exposing the locations and contents of bases he had been trusted with to enemies or the public. And in the 2b2t community, where base secrecy is fundamental to survival, this is one of the most serious betrayals a player can commit. So it established Whiteducker007 as someone who would infiltrate groups, build trust, and then destroy from within, which is a pattern that becomes a recurring theme through every identity he adopts. And second, there was erratic public behavior. Like Whiteducker007 was known for going on what people described as crazy rants in chat about various topics, like unpredictable, often aggressive public outbursts that made him a disruptive and widely disliked presence on the server. And one specific incident, described as the White Ducker autism attack, became infamous enough on 2b2tpe to be considered a defining moment of his presence on the server, and contributed significantly to him becoming a community-wide enemy. But dude, the most insane, immoral, degenerate thing from his history, and the one that most directly connects to the broader Marlow Rapture situation, is that he pretended to be a 12-year-old girl under the name Cavesider, and maintained this fake female identity for 9 months, specifically to gain access to a group space. And he even went as far as to deliberately alter his sleep schedule to appear to be in a different time zone, making the fake persona more convincing and harder to verify. Does the thumbnail finally make sense to you now? This person is a psychopath. Also, all of my information are from Gunheim's video, so make sure to subscribe to him as well. And this is such an extraordinary detail because before the Marlow persona existed, before Danger Mario's female catfishing operation was constructed, HideXL had already spent 9 months pretending to be a girl to infiltrate and exploit the community. Like the behavior that defines the Marlow scandal, using a false female identity to manipulate the community for personal gain, was not invented by Danger Mario. Both Danger Mario and HideXL had independently used this exact tactic before they even met. And the documents note explicitly, both are psychopaths, both have pretended to be girls to gain benefits, and both violently cheat. And this shared history is what makes their partnership so natural and so dangerous. Just like Danger Mario! And for all this behavior, Whiteducker007 became so hated on 2b2tpe that continuing under that name was no longer viable. So following the map reset on 2tpe, Whiteducker007 rebranded himself as HideXL, and this was an attempt to distance himself from the reputation he had built as Whiteducker007 and start fresh. And importantly, the reputation he was trying to escape from was not just from the base raids and inciting, it was primarily from the Cavesider incident, which had defined him as someone willing to fake an entire identity over months to manipulate people. But as HideXL, his core personality traits remained unchanged. Like he was described as one of the biggest degenerates ever in the community. He regularly made inappropriate statements and comments publicly. He was known for talking openly about wanting to be the best at things while simultaneously showing a pattern of being unable to achieve anything without manipulation or cheating. He was characterized as a narcissist who would rant about his personal problems and failures to people who had no interest in hearing them. and he would ban people who referred to him by his old name White Darker, demonstrating the same pattern of silencing critics through power that would later characterize both Marlow's and Rapture's behavior on MCTiers. But dude, the critical junction in this entire story is when HideXL and Danger Mario encountered each other, and the meeting happened on the Java Edition server called Elite Anarchy, which was run by Danger Mario himself and was used as a massive IP logging server. And an IP logging server collects the IP addresses of everyone who joins, which can then be used for various forms of online harassment and tracking. So running one is itself evidence of Danger Mario's willingness to collect and potentially weaponize personal information about other players. And the relationship between HideXL and Danger Mario began as rivals, because HideXL would constantly ban Danger Mario from the server, but despite this hostile start, the two eventually became friends. And this was perhaps inevitable given how similar their personalities, methods, and histories were, like two players who had both pretended to be ghosts to exploit communities. Both habitually cheated, both operated through alternate accounts and infiltration, and both shared what Gunheim describes as an insane amount of degeneracy. And the flip deepened to the point where HideXL and Danger Mario formed a team called Anti-Cheat, which despite the name suggesting the opposite, was a team dedicated to hacking on servers, together specifically including in 2b2t. And the irony of a team of hackers naming themselves Anti-Cheat is honestly hilarious, but this team represented the formalization of their partnership, like moving from two individual bad actors who happened to meet to a coordinated operation working together, and the skills, contacts, and trust built through the Anti-Cheat team would form the foundation of everything that came after. But significantly, the relationship between HideXL and Danger Mario extended beyond the digital space, because they met up in real life, and this in-person meeting deepened what was already an unusually close online friendship, creating the kind of trust and mutual understanding that would allow the subsequent operation to function without communication failures or betrayal from within. So with the Marlow situation fully understood as context, the operational logic behind creating Rapture as a second persona makes sense. Danger Mario, despite his carefully managed operation, understood that exposure was eventually inevitable. Like years of maintaining a fake persona at the highest level of a competitive community with multiple investigators and community members raising suspicions meant that the Marlow operation had a finite lifespan, so planning for what came after was consistent with how Danger Mario operated. And HideXL was the natural choice for the next persona for several reasons. First, there was loyalty through years, like 8+ years of close friendship, including real-life meetings, meant HideXL was one of the few people Danger Mario could trust completely with something this sensitive. Second, there was geographic separation, because HideXL living in California meant that the two personas could be convincingly presented as unrelated. Third, there was shared cheat infrastructure, because Danger Mario had already developed or acquired cheat clients through Guy and previously X and Q. So distributing those same cheats to HideXL required no new development. And fourth, there was financial motivation, because an old generation player who had largely disappeared from the community and needed income had every reason to accept the arrangement. And critically, both parties understood that repeating the female catfishing approach would be immediately recognized, given how recently Marlow had been exposed for exactly that. So instead of another female persona, Rapture presented as male, but retained every other element of the operation, like AI voice changing, identical editing and thumbnail style, the same cheat client, the same institution of protection through Guy, and the same pattern of banning critics. But now let me show you guys the evidence connecting HideXL to Rapture, because there's so much of it. First, HideXL disappeared from the community immediately before Rapture appeared, and this timing is treated as too precise to be coincidental. Second, both HideXL and Rapture had their dads teach them Airtable, which is an extremely specific and unusual shared detail. And the chances of two unrelated people having this particular detail in common is treated as essentially zero. And third, they share identical vocabulary patterns, like the same specific words, phrases, and speech rhythms appearing in both identities' communications. And this linguistic fingerprint is one of the most reliable ways to connect online identities, because people's natural language patterns are difficult to consciously change consistently over time. Fourth, Rapture's Minecraft skin is almost identical to HideXL's, described as essentially a recolor of the same skin design by Gunheim. and using a slightly modified version of your actual skin when creating a new persona rather than something entirely different is the kind of small lazy shortcut that exposes the connection. And fifth, there's a specific behavioral tell when in general community spaces, Rapture comes across as casual and troll-like, but when a situation gets serious or legally sensitive, he suddenly shifts to a very professional measured speech pattern, one that's described as identical to Marlow's, almost as if Danger Mario is on the Discord account talking for Rapture. And it is consistent with Danger Mario taking over Rapture's accounts during high stakes moments, managing the communication himself rather than leaving it to HideXcel. But dude, Gunheim states explicitly that Danger Mario helped Rapture with his videos, handling the editing, the AI voice processing, and the thumbnails, and this explains why the production style of Rapture's content so closely mirrors Marlow's, because the same person was producing both, and it also means Danger Mario had a direct financial stake in Rapture's YouTube success since the channel was generating real income, and Gunheim notes that Rapture had made over $1,000 from YouTube alone at the time of the video's release. And honestly, when you look at HideXcel's community history, it's a pattern of 3 consecutive community failures across different spaces. First on 2b2tpe as White Ducker 007, he became one of the most hated players, through base betrayals, alt-account manipulation, the cave side of female catfishing incident, and general disruptive behavior, and he had to rebrand to escape the reputation. Second on 2b2tpe and Java Edition as HideXcel, he built a reputation as a narcissistic, frequently inappropriate figure who achieved nothing without manipulation and cheating, and he met Danger Mario and formalized the cheating partnership but remained largely unknown beyond Anarchy server circles. Until on MCTiers Rapture, he used Danger Mario's infrastructure, cheats and connections to cheat to high T1 and mace PvP, generate YouTube income, and build a public profile, only to be exposed through the same investigative community pressure that brought down Marlow. And with that, the Danger Marlow Rapture XL situation comes to an end. It might genuinely be over this time. Anyways, thank you for the support of my videos and goodbye!